With the release of Twinmotion 2025, I realized that it's been a few versions since I made my last intro to Twinmotion tutorial. So I figured that enough has changed, it would be worth making a new video about this. The user interface has changed, they've added some new tools, and overall Twinmotion's gotten considerably better. So with that, the first thing you'll need to do is get Twinmotion. And to do that, you can go to twinmotion.com and you'll click on Get Twinmotion. And this will lead you to the Get Twinmotion page. And you'll download the launcher. And what this launcher is, when you click on it, it'll automatically download. I've already done this. This is actually the Epic Games launcher. Epic Games owns Twinmotion, and Epic Games also owns Unreal Engine. So we can think about Twinmotion as really Unreal Engine with a lot of the tools pared down just for making visualizations easier. We're not making essentially a full build of a video game, so we don't need all of the extra bells and whistles, and leveraged a lot of the interesting technology that's been coming out for Unreal, and they've packaged it all together for us. So we'll download the launcher, you'll set up the launcher, and once you do that, it will most likely ask you to create a Epic Games account. And from there, you'll have kind of your own user login, and you will open the launcher, or after you click download, everything should be working. You'll click open on the launcher, and you should see something similar to this. At the top, you should see a Twinmotion tab. We'll click on that. I have already downloaded Twinmotion 2025.1, so I'm seeing a launch button. I'll look at an older version that I don't have installed anymore, and if I click on that, this is probably what you'll see. So you'll want to click on the big install button, but make sure it's set to 2025.1. Once that's finished downloading, you can click on the launch button. So once Twinmotion fires up, you'll see something similar to this. We're at the home page here, and we have a little bit of news. It's giving us some extras. We'll also see our recent scenes. So I've already made one version of this tutorial as a trial run, and I have that saved here, so I can see the Twinmotion tutorial. I named it that. I could have named this anything I wanted, but I can see that I can open that. This can populate with a whole bunch of different scenes depending on what you're working on. So a quick shortcut to get to where you left off. I'm not going to go through much of the plugins or templates. That's a little bit more advanced we're just trying to get started up here. So I'll click on New Scene, and it'll open a new project. And I'm presented with the Twinmotion user interface. That is what the first thing that I'm going to go over is just introduction to how things are laid out here and where to find what you need to do what you want. Twinmotion has broken this down into a few different categories. They refer to them as the top bar, the header, there's the viewport, which is the main thing we're looking at. We have the panels, which they refer to the panels that are on the right and the left here. And then they have the docks, which is what they're referring to if there's kind of an area that'll bounce up here when we're going through this. And then there's the footer, which is down here. I'm going to go through each one of those main components very briefly, just to let you know where everything's at. There's really not too much harm you can do here if you're just starting out. Like, play around with this intro scene. Use it as a big playground to test stuff out. First, we have the top bar here. We have our file tab. This will let you do things like save and export if you want to, or import stuff if you want to. We'll go to the edit tab, and we have like undo, redo, copy, paste, that kind of thing. And we have help as well. And definitely, I think the most important one up here, if you're just getting started out, is this help tab. There's a whole YouTube channel devoted to a lot of different ways of using Twinmotion and some cool things that you can do. I definitely recommend checking that out. There's also community support and forums and documentation, and very useful button there. Next, we'll go over the header. And at the far left, we'll see we have a home tab. This will just open up the same thing that we saw before we clicked on New Scene. I can hit the close button in the upper right to get rid of that. And then as I move, I have these 3 lines, and these 3 lines are pretty important. Essentially, this is going to change the path tracer, enables or disables a path tracer rendering mode, and it can have a huge effect on your scene. When we click that, we'll see we get a whole bunch of little stipples and things like that, and that's all of the different paths kind of calculating the lighting in a little bit more accurate way. And we'll see we get a much higher quality, even with the stipples, than the default. We'll watch that finish up, and there is a built-in denoiser, so it'll kind of clean up the rendering and get rid of that noise. This does come at a huge performance hit in terms of moving around your scene, because every time I move or look around, it has to recalculate. So be wary of this button, but also we can flip it back at a click of a button and we're back in our other render mode. So really easy way to change your render mode. We have an eyedropper, and this will just allow me to select different materials out of my scene. It's kind of they call it a material picker. And then I have some quick buttons that will let me transform the different objects within my scene. So I'm going to click on this ball. I currently have the move button selected, or the translate. And so now I can drag my geometry around. That's an easy way to use that. Next we have rotate. We can spin around, and we're using this gizmo, or sometimes called a gumball if you're a Rhino user. And we can also scale stuff as well, so we could make things bigger or smaller. There's a few more extras hidden in here. I'm not going to go over this. We're just doing a basic overview. Definitely apply these out. These are kind of special use case items, and you shouldn't be affected by them initially. The ones over on the far right here might be the main ones, and this just changes how the gizmo moves the objects. So worth looking into, but we're not going to go over that too much. And over on the far right, I also have this little human, and this just shows you your Twinmotion account and how everything is working. So you can click on that. That closes it out for the header. The next one is the Viewport, and the Viewport has a few things. First, when you first start this up, you'll see the nav bar, and this actually, you can't interact with it. But what it does let you do is, or what it does is, shows you the different buttons to be able to move around, which is pretty nice. So kind of how to navigate, look around, and then also if we're moving, we can change our speed. So I'm at 6 and it's way too fast right now, but if we're doing a large scene, that can also be pretty useful. So I can go back to something a little more reasonable and move back into view here. So the next things that we have, right? So we've kind of gone over this, is we have this icon right here. And what this will do will hide all of the interface or user interface for you so that you can get a better preview. So a nice button there. Nice little toggle. And then we have an eyeball. So this eyeball gives you some quick tools to be able to export a screenshot or change the time of day. The way this one is pretty important, and I think it's worth going over, is the movement modes. So we have drone mode or pedestrian mode. I'm currently in drone mode, which allows you to move up, down, left, right, and also through objects. However, pedestrian mode will kind of glue you to the ground, and it will not let you walk through items. So I get kind of snagged on this, and it tries to push me away. So I'm unable to move through that ball. For setting up a scene, I usually prefer drone mode. Again, if you have a VR headset, you can click on that. The other one that I think is kind of useful is this house. And we can set up different projections of our view. So if we want to see a top view or an elevation or a bottom view, we can set that. For now, I'm just going to leave it in the default 3D. So I want to go over this really quick. Essentially, if I don't want to see this navigation panel anymore because it's blocking my scene and I'm comfortable moving through it, I will click on the eyeball, and I will come down, and at the very bottom, there's a little tab that's trying to mimic the same thing, I guess. I guess that's what the icon is. And I'll click on it, and I'll click on Hide Navigation. After that, we have our panels. For the different panels, the first one to go over, and we're going to go over both sides of these panels, is the library. And what the library is going to let you do is pretty much access to assets. So all types of assets, some 3D, some are 2D, but we're in the 3D space, so they're technically 3D. But anyway, it also gives you some access to some tools. And then you can also import or save, if you already have your own assets, you can manage that through the user library and be able to have access to all of those. I'm not going to go through that too much. When we start actually building the scene, we'll definitely be jumping into these. After the library, we have some statistics. And if I toggle that, I can see that I have my statistics here. And the statistics are pretty much how good my computer's running. I'm running at 84 frames per second, so I just get some stats and how much of my computer's being used here and how it's working. So pretty useful there. I'm not too worried about that. I think my computer is not going to explode, so I'm going to click on statistics and it'll kind of drop that panel down. The next one is the scene, which is on our upper right. And within this scene, we actually have the ability to look at all of our scene graph, is what they call it. It's pretty much all of the elements that we have in the project. So I can see I have my sphere. If I click on that, I have access to it. And I can go through all of the different objects that are in my scene. Then I have my properties. And if I click on an object, I can see my properties panel being populated. Important, the kind of main function of this panel, and it's going to do kind of a lot. So the properties panel is pretty heavy lifter here, and so I usually don't hide this panel at all. I leave it up because it will end up kind of populating itself or containing things for like the ambiance, things for like populating my scene, things for like exporting views. I can edit my materials here. I can replace objects. I can do a lot of stuff. So properties panel right now looks pretty boring, but we'll see that change as we keep going through this. So I think equally as important into these panels is the ambiance. And the ambiance panel now is kind of overtaking the properties panel. And within the ambiance panel, I can change my environment settings, I can change my camera settings, I can change the render settings. So a little bit further beyond when I'm just clicking this will actually change your render. And then I have some access to some effects. So within this environment, we can go through and we can really adjust how the environment looks. And with our camera, we can do things like changing focal length and the things that cameras do. So I'm not going to go through all those settings because we'll go over that when we actually make a scene, and we'll play with these different items. The next one I would say in these panels that will show up is I'm going to click on the Populate tab, and as I'm doing this, I'm clicking on a few of these items down here, and I guess I'll go over this a little bit. They refer to this element as the footer, and the main point of this is to show or hide the panels, or they have another flavor of panels they call docks. And so it's really just hiding and showing those different elements. So if I click on the Populate tab, now I have a new Populate panel. And I have 3 different ways to populate my scene. I can place elements, and this will allow me to kind of paint stuff around or use areas or things like that. I can populate things with paths, so I can draw a line and have like cars or people follow it. I think there's other things you can make follow it too, and then I have urban, and what urban will do is allow me to download some urban context. I believe it's using OpenStreetMap, so it's using, if there's any 3D data for buildings or roads or things like that, you can drop all of that in from OpenStreetMap fairly easily. So pretty useful tools there for populating your scene. as we're going through this is the export, and we'll see that populate this right side panel. And as we clicked on that, we can see we have the ability to export the different media that we create. And to get into that, we'll click on media, and we now see another panel show up, and they're referring to this bottom area as a dock and these sides as the panels. So if you're looking stuff up, maybe that's helpful. So within this dock, or what the dock is going to do for us, is that we have our media that'll end up being docked here, and we can add or create media from our scene using this. We can also look at our materials, so we can see all of the materials that are in our scene. And I currently am not seeing any, so I could go through and create some materials if I wanted as well. And then lastly, but also probably not least, it's on the far left, it's kind of maybe where you should start, is the import tab. And this will allow you to import different files into your scene. And so this is very useful. Things like a Datasmith direct link file is really useful for importing things like Revit and Rhino models and whole buildings and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch more in here, but as we kind of click on stuff, we can see some view sets. This is, again, a little bit more advanced, but this is what you would use to change your scene up so that you could show, I guess an example of that would be to show phasing on a project, like construction phasing. And it'll allow you to change certain elements in the environment for your scene and like kind of keep that all built up. So you can have like a tandem scenes really, but from the same base. Let's get in and actually make a scene.